you everybody for joining us for the second part of the New Zealand Business Application Summit in Wellington. Hope you had a good lunch. We're always open for feedback. If you think we didn't have a good variety or you would have preferred something else, that's all good. I'm getting thumbs up. All right, awesome. So the next session is probably, and I shouldn't be saying that, but it's the one that I'm excited about the most. Not because I'm part of it, but also because it's completely different than what we're usually used to. So typically we would go and go technical and talk about, how to do this in Power Automate or a Canvas app or something like that. And we tend to forget about some other softer aspects of launching an application, and that's the business side of things, the people side of things. So that's why I thought Dynamics 365 Power Platform in general has been heavily used by the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, as well as the Department of Internal Affairs for application processing. And I've heard stories from both camps, and some of them do overlap, some of them are different. So I thought, why not have a session where we talk a little bit about those differences, about the challenges that they faced, and about some of the things that can be improved. But also the purpose of this session is to get the lesson learned. And if someone is embarking on a large-scale project similar to what MBIE and DIA are working on, then they know what questions to ask and what to look for. So the war stories, basically. So I've got with me Annie Kim coming from MBIE, as well as Kiri O'Hogan coming from DIA. So Annie, do you want to start and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie Kim. I'm with MBIE, which Immigration New Zealand is a part of. So I lead the internal product capability team within Immigration New Zealand, where we support the digital platform that we have built for application processing within Immigration New Zealand. Cool.
And what sort of experience did you bring to the role, as you joined MBIE and as you worked with them?
So I was with MBIE when I joined the program. So the experience that I brought was my background in operational management and also subject matter expertise in immigration related matters, and also, I guess, the on-the-ground understanding of the pain points and the bottlenecks that we're trying to address with the technology.
Cool, that's nice. And Kiri, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Kia ora koutou. My name is Kiri O'Hagan. I'm a manager in the business at DIA of a team called Service Advice and Support. So my team is on the receiving end of program change, and we drive kind of continuous improvement on products that have been delivered to us, and we also deal with complex escalations from the business. Previously, I worked on the program as a service designer and then as a design manager.
Awesome. So in a nutshell, can you tell us a little bit about the project at DIA? What is it for? And maybe, what technologies it uses, but without going too much into the details of the technology?
Sure. So our transformation program is looking across our life event and identity service products, so passport, citizenship, births, deaths and marriages. But specifically, I'm going to be talking about our citizenship product. So previously, that was in a fully paper-based there was a fully paper-based process where customers had to submit a lengthy application form, come in for a face-to-face interview, and then attend an in-person ceremony. So now the application process is end-to-end online.
Okay, cool. And the technologies that you guys are using, so you've got a portal where people can log in, and then you've got a back office application to process those applications.
That's right, yeah.
Sounds good. Annie, can you also give us a little bit of background about sort of what Immigration New Zealand is doing with D365 and the Power Platform?
Yep, so very similar to DIA. We are creating an end-to-end journey using the digital platform. So we've got a front end, client dashboard. We've got the interactions with the client and back-end processing. And what we're trying to introduce in Dynamics is the automation and integration and a better user experience. So in terms of what we actually deliver to the public, it's visa applications and immigration-related applications. There's about 200 different types of applications, so we've got about 20 so far, and we'll continue that journey as we bring on more solutions into the product.
Okay.
But yeah, it's used by both clients and our internal staff.
Okay. And what was the main driver behind going through this portal submission process and the backend automation process as well?
Efficiency gains, productivity gains, and also better customer service. So much like DIA, we've got fully paper applications, we've got various legacy systems, so the experience is inconsistent and sometimes inefficient, and also in the current environment of people working remotely, it wasn't very conducive to encouraging that sort of working environment. But the biggest thing for us was obviously efficiency gains, because we have gone from a case-based processing to activity-based processing, and the driver for that is to try and maximize the components of an end-to-end journey where we can introduce as much automation as possible, so that we can free up our people to do the tasks that actually require the skills that they bring to the table.
Yeah, this is actually a very good topic that we might touch base on later on. And I've noticed that not just with MBIE and DIA, but with the introduction of automation, we see that the staff are now free to do other important things. If it's something that can be automated, let a machine do it. If it's a process that can be sort of offloaded from the workforce, let's do that. As an example, Steve Siciliano this morning was talking about Power Automate, but more specifically about Power Virtual Agent. And I had two encounters where I really appreciated the impact of technology on how we do business on a day-to-day basis. The first one was with IP Australia, where they said they introduced Power Virtual Agent, and they realized that rather than the call center getting shorter calls, the call center is now spending more time on longer calls, which didn't make sense to me. But then when you drill down into the statistics and understand why, it's because Power Virtual Agent can answer all those questions that are trivial, like what is my number for my copyright application? Where is my copyright application progressing, and what status is it in? And those are quick phone calls. Someone would pick up the phone, wait for an hour for the call center, and then finally get there, ask a quick question, 5 minutes, and they got the answer. They digitized that, and now people that pick up the phone and ask questions are really difficult questions that actually need investigation, need further insight into it. And that's why, as you said, freeing the people to do the things they actually hired to do and the difficult things that a machine cannot do. The other interesting aspect of that is in the Philippines, one of the MVPs, one of the main MVPs in business applications, the Philippines, was on a call with me, and he said, we've got a big concern because the Philippines is known to sort of do outsourcing for call centers. And now we're expecting about 20 million people to get laid off from call centers because now they're being replaced with things like Power Virtual Agent and speech to text recognition and being able to answer those really easy questions, which means, again, we've got less effort on the workforce. And one of what that MVP was doing, Paul Soleimani, he was trying to re-educate people to do other parts of the Power Platform that they're really good at, so that they can fill another gap that is coming up in the market. So it's really good to see that. Cool. So maybe what I'll ask you next, Annie, is in terms of how you guys sort of deliver the work. One thing that I've noticed working in the public sector is that there is a need for assurance of what is going to be delivered, and basically they're going to get completeness of the requirements that they've got. And sometimes that goes against an agile process. Do you guys feel that you do more analysis up front to better understand what is going to be designed and delivered to get that assurance, or do you still prefer the agile way of doing things?
I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. So absolutely, we do need to do a bit of analysis up front and understand the requirements and be able to articulate what it is that we are investing the money and the time and the people on delivering, so that people have that assurance and expectations on what will be delivered. But at the same time, in our sort of experience, because what we were trying to build was quite comprehensive, that quickly became not feasible to do all that heavy analysis up front, gather the requirements, because then by the time we come to delivering it, the requirements will have changed. So we started with a very waterfall approach, and then quickly realized that wasn't very compatible with the environment they were working in, the tight timeframes, limited budget, and expectations on just delivering. So we moved more to an agile approach. We were using things like user stories and acceptance criteria. And then once we started working with Microsoft Consulting, they introduced a SureStep methodology, which is more of a rapid development methodology. But it needed to be supplemented by other agile and waterfall sort of artifacts as well. So it was a real hybrid that we used.
Okay. Yeah. And so you mentioned about there was so much to do, and going maybe a bit agile, doing enough documentation and analysis on what is required is a good way to go. So in terms of completeness of the product that you got up front, was it a first step, and then you guys built on top of that additional features and capabilities?
Yeah, that's what we did. So initially we did have to, I guess we were forced into an approach of MVP. So we had to deliver something to show something and have a base product to then build on, because without really understanding what you have in front of you, it's really difficult to articulate the next layer of requirements. So it was a continuous enhancement journey that we were on, starting with an MVP deliverable. Okay, and I think that resonates as well with some of the stuff you were telling me, Kiri, in terms of when you guys got the product. I know I had a chat with you before, but you said the staff were so used to the old system, and they used, let's say, a blue screen system that might look ancient to some of us in the technology space and go, wow, this is old, this is ancient. But they were so efficient at it. Muscle memory was there. They knew exactly what buttons to push to get to the location that they wanted. So similar to what Annie was saying, when you first deliver it, it's difficult to tell how much you need until you actually start using the system. So can you tell us a little bit about what was the reaction of the people using it, and from a change management perspective, but also how did you look at enhancing it based on the feedback that you got?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, to give you context, I guess the old system was very much like a skeleton where a lot of the thinking and the work was done outside of that, and then key points were entered in. So moving to our new system, which is a lot more task driven with greater controls, was quite challenging for some of our people. I think in hindsight, we've kind of realised how streamlined our old approach was, in the sense that although it was a clunky system, we had cut a lot of the fat out of the process. So getting a customer in for a face-to-face interview enables you to work through any issues with missing information, things like that. So it has been, quite a shift for our people, both in terms of the value that I think they see themselves playing in the process, from shifting to that, you're spending most of your day on these kind of meaningful face-to-face interactions, shifting to more of a, digital process-driven approach. I think that said, there's no way that we could have carried on with our old system. So I think in terms of some of the lessons learned, like around training, we had an expectation that our people would all have a base level of digital literacy, so familiarity using Microsoft products, which would make it easier to transition into this new system. But I think perhaps in hindsight, we should have invested more in that upfront training needs analysis to understand that perhaps there was an initial capability lift needed before jumping into training people in that new system.
Okay. That's an interesting observation. And in terms of feedback that you got back from your people, how do you filter through it, and how do you bring it back into the backlog? So to Annie's point, efficiency is key. So would you sort of look at areas of improvement of efficiencies or other areas?
Absolutely. Efficiency is a key driver for us, particularly at the moment. Post-COVID, we've got a backlog of applications, so we're very much focused on reducing that. But we do have sort of regular forums for our people to raise suggestions and ideas, and then we go through and prioritise those.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned COVID. You stole my thunder.
Sorry.
That's okay. But yeah, how did COVID, what anticipation did you guys have of the events post-COVID, and knowing that it was just a phase, eventually it's going to be over? and then there's going to be an influx of applications, either people applying for citizenship or people applying for passport renewals, which is quite a big topic at the moment. So how did you guys plan for it? Is it technology or is it more workforce, business? How did you do it?
I think a bit of everything, and it has been really challenging with the passport surge. We've had to shift resource away from citizenship into passports to deal with that. So yeah, I think in hindsight, we underestimated how long it would take for people to adjust to using the new system. So yeah, if we were to go through that again, we would allow more time for that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. We actually had that issue just recently with one of my clients where the implementation team and even the technical side of the client built the system, and to us it was trivial. And that's mainly because we've used it for the last 10 years. We grew up with the system. We knew exactly what it was like before and how it's improved right now. But then you go and deliver it to the customer and to people that haven't seen the system before, and they go, wow, it's so complicated. There are so many buttons I can press, and there's so many things I can do. And as a technologist, I don't really think about that because I'm almost immune to it. I can't see it. So that's why I think it's really important to get that usability testing, get that feedback back from the people actually using the system, because not all of them will have the same digital literacy, at least in the Power Platform as we do, and then to see how that can be improved. What I would say as well to the community is give us that feedback. Like if you feel that maybe buttons are not placed in the right location, that sort of the screens are not correct, give us that feedback. And we have channels back to the Microsoft product team to say, in general, we've heard this and that about the product. Can you move that button and put it there? And chances are they will listen to us and they will make those improvements. So that's really good insight that, technologists usually don't have that. So just in terms of, maybe I'll ask you that question, Annie. In terms of figuring out sort of what is the next step, what are the things that you guys, or let's say you've got a backlog of more work that you have to do.
Yep.
How do you prioritize? Do you consider, for example, volumes on how often things are going to happen? Maybe peaks that you are anticipating in a specific time during the year, and how do you manage the priority of your backlog?
So to be honest, we're not even there yet in terms of thinking about what solution to onboard next, because what we're focusing on at the moment is stabilization. Because we have just delivered a significant transformational tool to the business, and to Kerry's point, we're having the same sort of responses from the staff where training perhaps wasn't enough. We underestimated the amount of training effort that was needed to ensure that people knew what to expect and how long it would actually take for people to get familiar with it. And in doing that, we also come across a few issues that we want to fix up as well, so that the platform is as stable as it can be before we start putting on more products into it. So at the moment, we are focused on relentless stabilization and also ruthless prioritization, because we don't want to be adding new features when we can actually spend that time stabilizing some of the less than stable components of the system.
Yeah.
But in terms of considering what solutions to onboard next, absolutely volume is one of them, but it's only one of many factors that we consider. We also consider things like how many staff this impacts internally, but also customer experience. Some of the more sensitive or politically sensitive products might come in first. So there's so many different angles to look at it, and I think this is something that will require a little bit more thinking from the business so that we can do this strategically, because there's so many different ways to cut it.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the stabilization is important. As technologists and as developers, we never have bugs, right? Our systems are perfect. We just deliver them. But the reality is not only do you have the hard bugs where something is actually not working, and you've got that hypercare period where you're keeping a close eye on the system, making sure everything is working, but also you need the feedback from the business on what is working for them, even though technically it is doing what it's supposed to do, but from a business perspective, it might be a bit challenging. Cool. Annie, I don't know how much you were involved maybe before the Dynamics product was selected, but one of the challenges that was raised at the keynote this morning is it's really difficult to find people to deliver.
Yeah.
right? So, and I guess we in this room are lucky because we are in this business. I consider myself very lucky because I ended up there by pure coincidence, right? I wasn't, I was 10 years old and like someone asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a power platform expert. That didn't exist, right? But to be in this space now is like, I feel very grateful to be there. And there's a lot of work around. But at the same time, we need more people to deliver. So it becomes really difficult to do that. So the two options are either to like go out to market and then to partner with a vendor, or to get people to actually support you internally by hiring them and doing that. Do you guys find challenges, maybe starting with you, Annie, in that space?
Absolutely. So I wasn't involved in the selection process. By the time I joined the program, we already had Microsoft Dynamics as the product. And at the time, basically the expectation from the business is that we can build our own internal capability. And I think that was kind of viewed as not a difficult task. And then we quickly came to the realization that it's not as easy to build that capability. And we did need some, experts from the market to help us build that capability to start with. So the difficulties obviously came from the state of the market right now due to closed borders. We're already starting from quite a tight talent pool. I think everyone is. So it's definitely not unique to us, but then that combined with the various waves of COVID that we had to deal with, where people got sick or family members got sick, or they had to, work extended periods of time remotely, which obviously impacts delivery when you are working to such a tight time frame. So that was all a challenge, and it still is, to be honest, right now. So we have built some internal capability, but it's something that does take a while to build, and it always needs to be supplemented by existing capability. So we're trying our best to build our internal teams, but obviously also relying on our vendor partners as well. So it's kind of a 80-20 rule that we've adopted, where we try to become experts in the 20% of the solution,
right,
which is expected to deliver the majority of our business requirements. However, also accepting that there will be that bigger chunk, which I consider to be the foundational sort of layer, where we have to rely on the more technical experts from the market and also from the vendors.
Okay, so one topic that we talked about before is understanding what of that product is out of the box and what from that product has been built by the vendor, by MCS, by someone else. Once the product is delivered, it's seamless. You can't tell the difference. So how did you understand what is that 20% of the specialization that you need?
Working with MCS very closely and then telling us what is configurable. But so we have, majority of our solution is configured, and we've got very little customization. Obviously, customization is not something that we want to touch ourselves. It is that configured layer, but even with that configured layer, it's what I consider to be the business process layer that I want our internal capability to really build their skills in. Anything outside of that to do with, the framework, the infrastructure, I consider to be outside of that 20%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So similar questions, Kiri. So from a workforce management, did you guys feel the impact of COVID, and did you have like mitigations to address that?
Yeah, we definitely did feel the impact, and I think we probably underestimated some of the demand, the return to passport demand. It was quite difficult to predict what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So we are still working through this backlog of citizenship applications, but we have been able to make quite a number of changes to our to the workflow, the way that we use the tool. We've added quite a bit of automation since going live, and looking at the figures between over a 6-month period this year and comparing it to last year, we've more than tripled our throughput, and that a large part is due to some of the automation that's been added in, and using the system can run a number of automated checks. We have an API with Immigration New Zealand, and actually dividing the work based on that is something that we weren't doing previously, and that's helped us a lot.
So leveraging digital to the best of its capabilities by automating whatever can be automated. That's actually really good, and it's good insight in terms of efficiency on how well you guys are delivering as well. Now, when you get feedback from your staff, to you, is it a black box? So you can't tell the difference between what was customized and what was built by this vendor or that vendor. To you, it's like, this is not working, and then you take it back to the backlog. Is that right?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
Yeah. And it makes sense, again, because us as vendors, our role is to provide the most seamless experience to the customers so that they can tell that actually this is not part of the system. It just works as if it's part of the system. One thing I just want to add just regarding the COVID story is that we had challenges, as you said, Annie, everybody in the market has challenges hiring people to do the work. And one of the main reasons for that, as I mentioned in the keynote this morning, is that lots of people have jobs, so unemployment rate is really low. People have high job stability because they're in permanent roles. They're not incited to move into another location. Salaries are going up everywhere. So that's a good thing. And then we always thought, all right, COVID is going to be over. Borders are going to open. New citizens are going to come into the country, and then that will solve our problem. But what we realize is that the same problem is happening across the globe. So Australia is opening its borders around the same time that New Zealand's opening their borders. So people tend to go to Australia. Canada's doing the same. The US is doing the same. So people that are actually around the world looking for opportunities, now they have a big pool of options on where they want to immigrate to. And New Zealand might not always be the first option because they got, more appealing options going into other countries. And that puts us as, second or third in terms of choice, and makes it really difficult to actually get those people to come into New Zealand and so on. So yeah, we're still in the run, but eventually I guess things will stabilize, but it will take a little bit of time to get to that situation. All right, let's have a look at. All right, so I'm assuming, Annie, so given that you guys are actually building that capability in-house, you consider yourself to have a high level of sort of dynamics and Power Platform maturity, where you've got people that can actually understand the solution and then work closely with the vendor to deliver some of those capabilities.
I would say the maturity is reasonably high.
Okay, yeah. And I think that helps a lot for the stability of the system and the enhancements that are coming up. So that's really good. All right. So this one is an interesting one. And I don't know how much details we want to go into it, but it's about the way you manage the applications. So my understanding from hearing the two sides is that an application is created and there are a bunch of tasks that need to be executed part of that application. You can either say you get one officer that owns that application and then can complete the application end to end, or you can say we've got multiple officers that are specialized in specific tasks, and each one will pick a specific task to work on. So which one did you guys choose at MBIE and why?
So we went from case-based to activity-based.
Okay.
And the reason for that was to maximize the benefits of automation. Because if you try to apply automation to an entire case, then obviously you have one of two outcomes. It's either automated or not automated. Whereas if you break it down into chunks, then you work on maximizing the pool of tasks where you can automate, regardless of the wider context of the rest of the application. Then at the time, the thinking was that the automation, the benefits of the automation will be maximized by doing it that way. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And with the IA?
So we've gone the other way initially, in that we still have end-to-end processing of an application by one person. But I guess we are using the system flexibly in that, based on the outcome of automated checks, we are dividing up the work and then routing those different types of applications to different people depending on their skill set. I think in future we may look to go down a pathway that is more based on division by units of work.
Okay.
But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those questions where there's no right or wrong answer. It's based on what works best for the organization, the people you've got at hand, because one of the challenges of doing it as a case-based application rather than task is that your staff have to be familiar with the entire process, and that sometimes might be challenging. But at the same time, if you're doing it on a task-by-task basis, you might lose that continuity where someone has that knowledge, and you have to almost restart it and then get them on board and so on. That's interesting. Now, at a high level, and it will be interesting to hear the answer to that. Did you find any technology challenges with the product that you were using?
In terms of what was delivered?
In terms of what was capable?
Yes, so absolutely, because we went from or multiple very bespoke and customized legacy systems, despite it not doing fancy things like automation. It was very particular to what we do, and something that people were very used to and familiar with, and could work with their eyes closed. And went to a system where you kind of have a quite a lot of components that you kind of you can't really influence. So things like look and feel is one of them, but that's probably easier for people to accept that, okay, I don't like the color, but I don't really care because it doesn't impact my job. However, some of the more customized functions, the nuanced functions that they're used to, if it's not in the new system, then people immediately think of that as a degradation of what they're offered. So they think that it's not as good as what they used to have, without really thinking about all the other benefits that it brings as a result. So there's that expectation sort of challenge from the business and adoption as well, because, we design the system in a certain way that we think will benefit the people. However, people are used to one way of working, so they try to use this new system, but doing it the old way, and then that doesn't work. So then, it's kind of framed as not working or not doing what it's meant to do.
That's interesting insight. Yeah. And Kiri, any challenges with the technology where you wanted something, but it couldn't do it?
I would say very similar experience for us. I think we were really focused on the customer experience, which is, significantly improved on what we had. I think we may have got our risk settings a little bit tighter than we needed in the back office. So we're really focused on malfeasance from customers or staff, but actually I think having those really tight restrictions really impacted our efficiency. So that's something we're looking at. Can we adjust those now and take more of a risk-based approach, use monitoring and things to ensure that we've still got that integrity. I think having it really locked down didn't serve us well in terms of the efficiency gains.
Yeah, that's really good. And I just want to come back to something that you said, which is the customer experience has been enhanced. And I think this is one of the reasons why I love working in that position and being with the public sector, is because listening to the executives in there, and they say, our main purpose in life is to make sure that we've got the best experience for the New Zealand citizen and the citizens to be. So I remember when Maria Robinson was talking about, she did her speech, and it was so emotional, so moving as well, to see that, this is our drive, this is what we're trying to do. And straight away I was like, where can I help? What can I do? Let me get behind a computer to go and address that. But it's such a noble thing to do, is to ensure that the population comes first. And we're basically doing that with taxpayers' money for the taxpayers to be, so that they can get that excellent experience. And also what you said, Annie, is, there are some things that we cannot change. And the user interface, I'm assuming you're talking about model-driven apps, which are sort of the back office applications, is a very good example. So model-driven apps compared to Canvas apps, model-driven are the ones that almost are out of the box. The controls look the way they look. You can't change the colors, you can't change the size, you can't change the font. And in a way, it's a good thing, because you go, that's it, that's what you get, that's out of the box. I don't have to think about it. You put it in there or you put it in there, but that's it. This is the only choice you've got. Whereas going down something like a Canvas app where it's pixel perfect, and I always say, the good thing about a Canvas app is that it's pixel perfect. The bad thing about a Canvas app is that it's pixel perfect. So you have to think about every pixel and where it goes and what color it is and what shape it is and so on. So in a way, and as you rightly pointed out, removing those decisions that don't really impact your day-to-day work is good, because then you can focus on efficiencies and ways of enhancing things and so on. And in a way, I'm really proud that sort of the answers that you gave is that, yeah, there were some challenges and we understood what those challenges are. But I know of a lot of challenges on each side that I'm probably not going to drill too much onto because I can spend an entire day on, that we as vendors sort of bang our heads against the wall just to make sure that you guys don't notice them. So there was some challenges in implementing those where we went beyond. We extended the platform so that it looks like it's seamless, it's providing the best experience to the customers, and it did do that, and that's why you guys didn't mention them. So I'm really happy about that. All right. So yeah, let's change gears and talk a little bit about change management. And I know we covered quite a few items around there. So yeah, one of the challenges, Kiri, was around sort of people knowing the system and using it. What sort of feedback did you get from the staff? Like to what extent were they happy or unhappy about the change, and how do you address it?
I think we saw quite a range in our people. So we actually, for other business reasons, have retained our legacy system in operation. We're coming to the process of decommissioning that very soon. But what it's meant is that for some staff, they've had to swivel chair between two systems. And so we've recently trained our last cohort in using the new system. And it's been really interesting to see some have adjusted very quickly, whereas others haven't. And I don't know whether it comes down to ultimately digital literacy and maybe comfort with change. In the citizenship space, we hadn't really had any significant changes to processes over the past 20 years. So for some people, it was really quite hard to adjust. I think the new tool, it does require quite a bit of clicking, which people found hard from the old blue screen type system. So maybe more shortcuts and things might have been something we could have done. We have looked at like adjusting buttons and information and drop downs and things to try and streamline that. I think what we probably assumed was that moving to a modern system, efficiency is just a given. But some very minor things can interrupt the flow that people have. I think maybe focusing more on what is someone actually doing during the day rather than just end-to-end of one application. In our case, people are working on 40 or 50 at any given time. So what does that look like? And does the design actually enable people to move efficiently through that?
Yeah. So did you feel that there was a bit of resistance in some cases, but some others just accepted it? And then...
so quite a range. And I think, managing performance is an ongoing thing that we're doing.
Yeah. And how do you do that study of efficiency and performance? Like you talked about, sometimes moving a field a little bit higher up means that you have one less click or one less scroll, which significantly improves your productivity. How do you do that study and how do you get that feedback?
I guess we have a design team who have done some specific studies on particular changes, but we also are looking at our reporting and overall throughput, getting feedback from our people about what's working for them and what's not.
Okay. All right. So you've got a couple of channels there. Was there anything in terms of change management that was unanticipated? So we talked a little bit about taking efficiency for a given, but any hidden costs for change management where you're like, we wish we did a little bit more investment in there?
I think the training initially, as Annie said, wasn't really enough to get people comfortable. And so probably it's just calculating the benefits over a longer period of time and not assuming efficiencies until you actually see them in practice.
Okay. And you mentioned that you guys had systems running in parallel. Was that also a challenge to decide when this is going to be switched off and migrated and so on? And how did you make the decision that there'll be two and so on?
Yeah, I think there are a whole range of reasons why we still have the old system up and running. I'm not really sure if I'm best placed to answer that one.
Okay, fair enough. And with you guys, not everything got delivered on day one. So was there any like the swivel chair that you were talking about, Kiri, where you had to do a lot of that, and how did you manage it?
A lot of difficulty. We still have multiple legacy systems, and that doesn't only cause difficulties for our staff, but our external users as well. Because what we are trying to do is fundamentally change the way that people work and interact with our customers, interact with us, and also change some of their customer behavior. But that effort becomes very difficult when you can't say, well, now this is how you do it. Because what we are now saying is, now this is how you do it, except for this situation, this situation, this situation, this situation. So it becomes very confusing for our external customers as well as internal staff, because depending on the situation, you're still kind of sticking to the old ways, but in certain situations, you're expected to work in a new way. And that mind shift hasn't been that clean cut to say, well, now you can move into this space and forget about that. You kind of need to juggle both. So it has been very challenging.
Okay. And in terms of sort of the efficiencies that we were talking about earlier, how did you guys measure that?
Yeah, so that's an interesting topic, because productivity dips before it actually comes up. And it's because the change that's introduced is so significant. And I don't think people really think about that when you deliver, such a comprehensive tool, because of the investment, the time that's gone into it. People expect results straight away.
Yeah.
And when they don't see results, they're not happy. But I think that recognition that productivity will initially dip, no matter how fancy the system is, needs to be recognized, because we are asking people to do things so differently. Absolutely. And get used to mindset and way of working that it will inevitably dip. So in that sense, it's been a little bit difficult to measure in a pure sense what productivity gains this particular, initiative has delivered, because you've got all these other factors to consider. It's not a perfectly controlled environment. Yeah. But obviously, feedback from staff, we do look at stats. We get feedback from customers. Obviously, not all feedback is insights, so you have to be careful that you don't get distracted by the noise, extract the insights and really. It's like social media. Yes. How do you filter that? Yeah, absolutely. So it's still an ongoing journey to try and really measure what gains this has given us. But there are certain areas where the efficiency gains that we have had are quite clear cut. Despite everything, despite the disruptions, despite the feedback, there are some undeniable gains that we have been able to measure and celebrate. Absolutely. Yeah. That's good. We're just conscious of time. I think we're just heading to the 45 minutes mark. So any final words, maybe starting with you, Kiri, any recommendations, anything you would tell people that are embarking on such a big project, what they should be doing?
So I feel like I've reflected on some lessons, but I do want to say that overall the system is, so much better than what we had. We've got so much better visibility of work in progress. We can track work volumes through processing patterns. We can control access to ensure the right people are accessing the right work. And we've got, baked in privacy by design. So we've got real confidence in the privacy of customer information. But also I think we have so many more opportunities to really leverage the automation capability. So it is hard reflecting on, how much of that could we have done prior to going live with the system. I think there are certain things that you really can't figure out until you're in it and you can see how it's working. So I guess just to reiterate, calculating benefits over a longer period, so allowing for that productivity dip. I would say more modelling and forecasting with real-time adjustments all the way through, so timings, consider increasing the pool of staff that you have while going through the change. We were looking at things with a customer experience and a risk lens, but had assumed more of the efficiency, so I think we could focus on optimizing that, being really deliberate about that, and looking at more enabling people to do things rather than restricting their ability and using the monitoring and auditing tools. I think, what else? Just recognizing really that people's jobs did change quite massively through this piece of work, and there has been a loss of status, and so I don't know that there's any sort of real silver bullet for this, and probably acknowledging that it will be painful is something that
Absolutely.
we would kind of recommend.
Yeah. I think we heard that message loud and clear, and also you got a positive feedback here that you can use for other customers. And any last words from your side?
Yeah, very similar. And also, I think the key takeaway for me is, despite all the pain points that we are still working through, I don't think I would change anything in terms of what we did. I'm very proud of what we have delivered. There's so much potential that is yet to be uncovered, and the key is really just on focusing on those areas rather than what's not working right now. But for me, what would be really one thing that I may have done differently would be to really recognise all the additional things that would now be needed as a result of this transformation. So instead of just focusing on the benefits and only thinking about the benefits, also just having a really realistic expectation around where then do we need to resource up contrarily in order to support what we have delivered. So automation is great, and everyone talks about automation. How do we automate more? Can we automate everything? But automation doesn't come free. It's very high maintenance, and it requires the watering and the nurturing and the maintenance. And I feel like we didn't pay enough attention to how much resources and effort will be needed to maintain that. However, recognizing that the resources are now more concentrated in one area of the business to be able to benefit the wider audience. So that's something that I think businesses should be a little bit more strategic around where they invest.
Yeah.
Investing to save and having that longer term view rather than always just thinking about how do we cut costs, how do we get more benefits, and just focusing on the benefits.
Yep. Excellent. That's a really good message. All right. Well, we're out of time, but yeah, thank you very much, Annie, for presenting today. Thank you, Kerry, and thank you, the audience, for that.